Welcome back to Travis Teaches Guitar. Today we're going to get a little bit more involved with this old guitar. On the last session I taught you a finger exercise that is commonly referred to as the spider exercise. I'll get a little bit deeper on that today, and I'll show you another chord and something that you can switch around to. Won't get too involved, but I'll give you just enough. We're going to get you playing a song before too long. Something I want to go over to you today. Something is very important. That a lot of times people, when they play guitar, they have a resistance to learning music. I don't like to teach that way because you can't get away from music. You know, you don't have to be an expert in music theory, but if you definitely want to play with other people, you need to understand music, at least in a basic sense. So when I'm teaching you these things, I'm not going to so much teach you by numbers and tablature, but I'm going to teach you by music and rhythms and in that manner. Okay, I will give you some what they call tablature. I will explain that later if you don't already know. But what I think is very important, especially at first, when you don't know too much of anything, and now this is when you have the time, these little things like this are going to help you later on. Yesterday, or the last session, I showed you the strings, their note names: E, A, D, G, B, and E, right? Eddie ate dynamite, goodbye Eddie. Okay? I told you about these frets. These dots are position markers. Sometimes you'll have them up in 3, but you'll almost always, a guitar is going to have it in 5, on the 7th fret, on the 9th fret, and on the 12th fret. And if you'll notice, it's got 2 dots right here instead of 1. And what that is telling you is that this repeats. So the same as this is E, this is also E, but it's obviously higher, right? It's an octave higher. It's what in music is what they'll call that. I'm going to give you sheets that will help you remember this, PDF, so you can download, and it'll make this a little bit easier because it's hard to absorb it when I'm going through it on the video. Of course, you can always rewind and stuff like that, but I will give you a PDF of these things in terms that will help you. We're not going to go through the whole neck all at once, but I want you to at least understand up until 5. 5 is a familiar position where this first dot is. On some guitars, this is the first dot, but almost right here is first dot. It's the 5th fret. Okay, so in music you have sharps and flats, and really sharp means to raise a note, and to flat means to lower the note. So for instance, if I'm playing, this is an A here, right? If I move it up here, that becomes A sharp. If I move it down here, notice I went up the neck, but it's not. It's down the neck, up the neck. So I move down from A to A flat. A, I go up by 1, A sharp. A, down by what this is called, it's a half step. Just 1 fret, right? And that becomes A flat. So this is the sharp, and it works here. I'm sharping that note, flattening that note, right? All I'm doing is just sliding it. So we'll teach you all these little tricks later. But for now, what I want you to know is this is the E string. On this first fret, F, G, A. So if you want to go through all of these, right, which is what I recommend, is that at least get yourself very familiar with the notes on all strings, at least to here, to 5, because you're going to be here a lot. And it's going to be very helpful for you at the beginning and on through your music career that you understand or have a familiarity. You should really have them memorized, to be quite honest with you. But it may take you a while to be memorized, but not as long as you think that it would, right? This stuff will make sense to you given time and given your study, your practice. It will start to make sense. But for now, I'm going to go through them one at a time by the fret, right? Rather than by the position that I just showed you. E, F on 1. On the 2nd fret, I'm sharpening it by 1. F sharp, G, G sharp, and A. Alright? You have the A here, and now if you'll notice, this is also an A string. So these are the same. Exactly the same. So now we're going to start here. Your A string, B flat, or A sharp. Since we're going up, we're going to call it A sharp. B, there's no flat or sharp in between B and C, so this is C on the 3rd one. C sharp and B. Okay? That's also your D. D, D. You'll start to see this pattern. D, D. So your D string, 88 dynamite. D sharp, E. There's no flat or sharp between E and F, not between B and C, and not between E and F, and those are the only ones. So you have E, F, F sharp, G. Your next string is the G string. So if you notice, all the way across this position, the 5, you put your finger there, the next string that's directly underneath it is going to be the same. So now we're on the G string. G, G sharp, A sharp, B, C. Here, this string, your 2nd string, the 2nd one from the bottom, but it's the 2nd string, is the B string. If you notice, our B was here. That's the only one that's different across this 5th. Right here on the 4. Same. So this is your B string. No sharp and flat in between B and C. Just like here, B, C. B, 1st fret C, 2nd fret C sharp, D on the 3rd, D sharp, E. Now, once again, we're on the 5th, on that 5th dot there. And we got our E string directly below it, and it is the same as your 1st string here, but we'll go through it again. F, there's no flat or sharp between E and F. F sharp, G, G sharp, and A. So you got your A here, A. You're going to start seeing these patterns throughout here. I know that sounds like a lot right now, but when you get to look at it and you see how this is written out and you see all the notes all at once, you'll see that there's a pattern across here. And that's going to help you when I give you a really cool way to tune a guitar to really make it sound sharp. Sharper than an electric tuner can make it. It's sharp. It's how I learned how to tune, and I'm glad that someone had showed me early on, because then I didn't have a reliance on it helps your ear, which is the most important thing in music. So, with that out of the way, I want you to at least take steps to memorize these notes up to the 5th position. If you want to memorize more, that's great. That's great. but you should at least, at the very least, know them up to the 5th position. Okay? If you want to do the spider exercise that I showed you yesterday, this. You can do it up here. It'll give you a stretch. Remember to keep your fingers very close. Basically as close as you can get them. They barely lift them off the string, so they're not touching the string, so you're not deadening it out like that. But close enough, the least amount of movement that you're making with that exercise, the better. That'll serve you well going into the future. You don't develop the habit of doing all this. It looks all flashy, but trust me, you don't want to get into the habit of doing that. Okay. Yesterday I showed you the E chord, which was this open E string, your 2nd finger on the 2nd fret, which is B, your 3rd finger, your ring finger on the other E, your 1st finger on the G string on G sharp, which is the 1st fret here. So it's a shape that looks like that, which would also be you'll see this pattern keep coming up over and over and over on the guitar. It's very pattern oriented, the guitar. It's not like a piano where everything is in a line. A guitar it's very pattern oriented, and you'll start to recognize more and more of these patterns as you go along. Today, the chord I want to teach you is A. Yesterday we learned E. This is E major. Your A string is going to be open. Your 2nd finger is going to be on the 2nd fret, fretting the E note, D, D sharp, E. Your ring finger is going to go directly behind it on the same fret, on the 2nd fret, and it's going to fret the A. G, G sharp, A. So you got finger on the E, on the A, and then your pinky is going to go on C sharp. That is what makes up an A chord. Is A, C sharp, and E. So you got your A on the top, your top string, E, A, and your C sharp. It's just your fingers in a straight line here. Keep this finger and all the fingers relaxed for the most part. Only put as much tension on there as you can. Keep them on your fingertips. Keep your thumb. That's what it should sound like. If you go through them one by one, you're not hitting this bottom string. You're starting at your A string. You keep this one out of the mix because it doesn't sound terrible, but it starts to sound a little muddy. You don't want that. But you want to hit from the A string and just glide on down. Make it one solid sound. This is where Mr. Metronome comes in. We talked about this earlier, right? I'm going to put it, by now you should have already got one, or at least looked at one. So if you'll notice that all the metronomes, they have a tempo on there. If I were you, I would start around 60 to 70, just to get a feel. We'll start at 70. So let me get the tempo set here. Sometimes you gotta tap it. The other one I use is a little bit easier to use than this, but we have it set at 70. 70 beats per minute. So it's just slightly more than 1 a second, right? You're adding 10 beats every minute on top of 60, right? If that makes any sense to you. So it's going to sound like this. Usually the slower it gets, the harder it is to hit it right on the beat. This is a good thing to practice. And just feel that. Do it for as long as you want. Can never do it too often. Can never do it too long. The more you're connected with that, tap your foot to it, snap your fingers. But at some point, I tap my foot constantly, even if I don't mean to. Now it's just becoming ingrained in me. This is how I want you to practice your chords. Like such. Your exercise, I want you to do the same way. Alright? If you're making mistakes going through that, go slower. You don't have to do it at 70. You can do it at 20. You can do it at 10. However it is that you can do it perfectly, then that's great. Bump it up to challenge yourself. Bump it up by 5. Bump it up by 10. If you start making a bunch of mistakes, slow it back down. Drop it back down. It's not a race, right? You're going to improve a lot faster. Let me shut that off. You're going to improve a lot faster with a steady progress like that. It gets boring sometimes. A lot of times what I'll do, here's a tip for you. A lot of times what I'll do, if I'm doing like mundane exercises like that, and I'm trying to reach a specific goal, say I'm trying to figure out I'm trying to get my fingers back here to do a certain pattern. What I'll do, especially if it's slow, I'll turn on a video, I'll turn on YouTube videos. Or whatever I'm doing. I take my guitar. I don't even need to use this hand. To the metronome. 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and... And I'll keep bumping up by 10. And before you know it, you've been doing that for 30 minutes, 45 minutes. Your hand learns that. And it's hard for it to forget it. You start out at 40, 50, in a week's time, you'll be up, in the hundreds. And you'll be... in no time at all. That metronome works like magic. People hate it, but I swear by it. It works like magic with your fingers. One day you can do something, the next day you're doing it faster. And it helps you to measure your progress because, 10 is kind of ridiculously slow. 40 is very slow. If you're just trying to hit 40, it's very slow. So you get below that and you're challenging yourself for sure. So you want to do it, go for it. I do every now and again. But if your goal is to build speed, do it gradually. You can't do it all at once. You cannot start out and have these fingers. It's not going to work like that. But if you do it gradual, I swear, every day, pretty soon, you're going to, and it's just going to keep getting faster and faster and faster until, obviously you're going to reach your limit. But your limit's not going to be for a while. You do that exercise every day, and you do it to a metronome, your timing is going to be great. You're going to keep getting faster and faster. You're going to be happy with yourself. You won't get quite so frustrated with the guitar, right? Because at first, you're not going to feel like you can do anything. That exercise right there is going to pay dividends for you when you comes to doing other stuff. When we start getting into scales, your do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. That exercise is going to pay dividends in there. And all these scales that you hear about, that you watch YouTube videos about, they all have their place. But the fundamentals you need, which is your fingers close to the fretboard, your movements, all relax. And let me talk about relaxation again. Because I'd like to go into it deeper. And it's extremely important that you understand where all this tension builds up in your body when you don't realize it. Even when you're not playing in front of somebody, but you'll see it very noticeably. If you learn something, you learn a song, when I teach you songs, or you just learn something, you figure something out on your own, and you want to show somebody, right? And you're going to get in front of them, and all of a sudden you're going to tense all up, right? And you'll do weird things, like your shoulders will start getting this tension and your neck will start hurting. You'll find yourself fretting the notes ridiculously hard to where your fingers hurt. You don't have to do that. This is why in the beginning I can't overstress in paying attention to how much tension you're using and being relaxed and understanding that you are relaxed when you sit down before you start playing, and to maintain being relaxed, right? Breathe while you're playing guitar. Think of your stomach as a pillow. Is it soft or is it hard like a cement block, right? Because you'll play in front of a mirror and watch yourself as you're playing, as you're doing the exercise, or when you're playing chords. Listen to the chord. Listen if you hear rattling or dead notes. It's only going to be because of a couple, either your finger position, your hand position, because as I told you yesterday, your fingers need to be curved, right? Like this. So they're coming straight down onto the strings as much as possible. Your fingers, your pinky kind of goes a little bit sideways, but it's still, you play with the tips. That's going to be the uncooperative one right there, always. But it'll get better. Trust me on that. The more you deal with it, if you try to leave it out of the mix, you're going to limit yourself playing. Keep that pinky and work it. Make it work, whether it likes it or not. And it will pay off for you, trust me, in your playing. Because you need all of your fingers. You need them here. Maybe not need them here. Depends on your style of playing. I need these 4 fingers back here. And I need my fingers here. Generally in anything that I do. Because they're both doing an equal amount of work when I get going. Only enough pressure to fret the note. Not too little to where it's rattling like that. Not so much where you're killing and pulling it out of tune, but then also making the ends of your fingers sore. They will get sore, especially if you play for a couple hours at a time. Your fingers will get sore. But if you love the guitar, you'll play through that, and that's going to be your first month, is getting these calluses built up on the ends of your fingers. Let that happen and give yourself a chance. Your fingers get sore, you can still play. They're not going to bleed unless you're playing, you're squeezing too hard. And then you have to evaluate that, right? Sit up straight. Let your stomach be a pillow. Don't have your shoulders, just when you first sit down at the guitar, like I told you before, sit here with it, have your hand here, and feel how it feels to be totally relaxed. Stay that way. In your hands, let the weight of your fingers, of your arm, help you in pushing down the strings and fretting the notes. It doesn't have to be all, your fingers cannot be gripped to the guitar, right? You're putting effort into fretting the notes too, but let your arm do some of the work as it falls. It's also pulling down, so you don't want to dig your fingers into the strings, okay? That's one of the most important things. I have a book here that has been a godsend to me. It's called The Principles of Correct Practice for the Guitar. It's by a lady named Jamie Andreas, and she's been teaching this method for many years. This whole book really doesn't have much to do with music or any such thing, but it is it's about relaxing and paying and like total body awareness when you're playing, when you're not playing, and how you're approaching the guitar, how you're fretting notes. Each little movement she goes through and helps you so you don't develop these habits that will come back and bite you later. If you are get in the habit of having your fingers like this and you're trying to play fast and that is your goal, then you are going to have a rough road ahead of you, because you can only go so fast when your fingers are doing like that. They don't need to do that. They only need to move as much as you need them to move. You don't need to be making big movements with either hand. What you need to be is relaxed. The speed will come with your precision and being relaxed. So, what I want you to keep practicing with your metronome, put it at however beats you want or whatever rhythm you want. But I want you to practice your E chord still. 2, 3, 4. When you get comfortable with this, switch to the A. See how pretty that is? 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Practice that over again, over and over. Experiment with those two chords with different rhythms. Use your metronome. 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Experiment always with the guitar and come up with new things. Just pay attention to your technique, the rattling, clean chords. Go through your chords one by one and make sure no dead notes, no rattling. Make it sound pretty. Always play pretty. It's a beautiful sound. Do this. Next time we'll give you some more exercises and another chord. Get you playing a song. Till next time, keep practicing.